According to the Bible, Jews were never the indigenous people of Palestine and always sought to steal the land from the native Palestinians with genocidal force. They had to pretend that their made-up God of Israel gave Palestine to the Jews because the Jews did not own this nation, but nevertheless wanted to take it and murder everyone who lived there, including the pregnant women and babies. They have spent 4,000 years doing this over and over again before being chased back out from the country they stole. Though the Zionists publicly promised the world they had no intention of displacing the Palestinians and stealing every bit of their land, it was all a lie and a sleight of hand magic trick to dupe Christians and Muslims into opening the gates of Palestine to large-scale Jewish immigration. The founding father and first prime minister of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, told his fellow Jews that the plan was still what it had always been, to commit genocide against the Palestinians and rob them of everything they had, including their homes, their country, and their lives. Sima Flapan wrote, Ben-Gurion's long-range objective was quite clear. Just as I do not see the proposed Jewish state as a final solution to the problems of the Jewish people, he told his party members, so I do not see partition as the final solution of the Palestine question. Those who reject partition are right in their claim that this country cannot be partitioned because it constitutes one unit, not only from a historical point of view, but also from that of nature and economy. Addressing the Zionist executive, he again emphasized the tactical nature of his support for partition and his assumption that after the formation of a large army in the wake of the establishment of the state, we will abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine. He reiterated this position in a letter to his family during that same period. A Jewish state is not the end, but the beginning. We shall organize a sophisticated defense force, an elite army. I have no doubt that our army will be one of the best in the world, and then I am sure that we will not be prevented from settling in other parts of the country, either through mutual understanding, in agreement with our neighbors, or by other means. Ben-Gurion was not alone in this belief. Even Weizmann, perhaps the most moderate of all the Zionist leaders, hinted that partition might be only a temporary arrangement for the next 20 to 25 years. And the Congress, in a typical gesture of pragmatism, declared the Peel Plan unacceptable, but authorized the Jewish Agency to negotiate with the British government in precise terms for the establishment of a Jewish state. Haaretz of Israel reported that War Chief Moshe Dayan, for example, thought that the country should be homogeneous and supported the removal of the Arabs by force. Don't let them feed you their lie that Hamas forced the Israelis to commit genocide against the Palestinians. It was always their plan to kill off and expel all of the Palestinian people and destroy or take everything from them. The second prime minister of Israel, like the first, declared that the official policy was to get rid of the Palestinians once and for all. John Udis recorded Moshe Shirtak Sheret's plan to eradicate the Palestinian natives. In August, Shirtak assured Weizmann that the Israeli government would not compromise. With regard to the refugees, we are determined to be adamant while the war lasts. Once the return tide starts, it will be impossible to stem it, and it will prove our undoing. As for the future, we are equally determined to explore all possibilities of getting rid, once and for all, of the huge Arab minority which originally threatened us, he wrote. The con had been the same from the beginning. Play the victim and demand the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, while deceitfully claiming that the rights of the indigenous Palestinians would not be violated and concurrently and covertly planning to destroy and eliminate the Palestinians. Operation Yohanan is one example of this 4,000-year-long history of this treacherous campaign to take Palestine from the Palestinians, as Nur Masalha explained. The idea of transferring the Palestinians, a euphemism denoting the organized removal of the Arab population of Palestine to neighboring or distant countries, was held widely in Israel after 1948. In fact, the concept, delicately described by its proponents as population exchange, emigration, resettlement and rehabilitation of the Palestinians in Arab countries or elsewhere, etc., is deeply rooted in Zionism. As demonstrated in my earlier book, Expulsion of the Palestinians, The Concept of Transfer in Zionist Political Thought, 1882 to 1948, the transfer notion was embedded in the Zionist perception that the land of Israel or Palestine is a Jewish birthright and belongs exclusively to the Jewish people as a whole, and, consequently, that Palestinian Arabs are strangers who should either accept Jewish sovereignty over the land or depart. This study discusses Operation Yohanan, a secret transfer scheme that Israeli ministers and senior officials attempted to promote after 1948. Benny Morris documented some of the history of the planned forced transfer of the Palestinians out of Palestine, which had always been the true intention of Israeli leaders, and which is being aggressively implemented today as the Israelis genocide the Palestinian people and chase them out of their native land so that Jews can replace them. Ben-Gurion was not the only Zionist leader who kept anxiously, not to say obsessively, mulling over the possibilities of transfer. Chaim Weizmann, president of the Zionist organization and the movement's liberal elder statesman, repeatedly pressed the idea on various interlocutors. The following is a description, possibly penned by Louis Namir, one of Weizmann's aides, of Weizmann's talk with Soviet ambassador to London Ivan Maysky in January 1941. The talk focused on the post-war settlement in Palestine. Dr. Weizmann said he had had a very interesting talk with Mr. Maysky. Mr. Maysky said there would have to be an exchange of populations. Dr. Weizmann said that if 500,000 Arabs could be transferred, 2 million Jews could be put in their place. That, of course, would be a first installment. What might happen afterwards was a matter for history. Mr. Maysky's comment was that they in Russia had also had to deal with exchanges of population. Dr. Weizmann said that the distance they had to deal with in Palestine would be smaller. They would be transferring the Arabs only into Iraq or Transjordan. Mr. Maysky asked whether some difficulties might not arise in transferring a hill country population to the plains, and Dr. Weizmann replied that a beginning might be made with the Arabs from the Jordan Valley. But anyhow, conditions in Transjordan were not so very different from the Palestine hill country. Dr. Weizmann explained that they were unable to deal with the Arabs as, for instance, the Russian authorities would deal with a backward element in their population in the USSR. Nor would they desire to do so. The possibility of solving the problem of Palestine had in effect been shelved by Britain, the Zionist movement, and the Arabs during the Second World War. The world had more pressing problems. So for the duration of the global conflict, talk of the practicalities of transfer was pointless. Nonetheless, the matter came up from time to time in internal Zionist deliberations. For example, on the 7th of May, 1944, the JAE discussed the British Labour Party executive's resolution supporting transfer as part of a solution to the Palestine conundrum. Moshe Chertok Sharet, the director of the Jewish Agency's political department, soon to be the State of Israel's first foreign minister and second prime minister, began. The transfer can be the archstone, the final stage in the political development, but on no account the starting point. By doing this, i.e., by talking prematurely about transfer, we are mobilizing enormous forces against the idea and subverting its implementation in advance. And he continued, what will happen once the Jewish state is established? It is very possible that the result will be transfer of Arabs. Ben-Gurion followed Chertok. When I heard these things, i.e., about the Labour Party executive's resolution, I had some difficult thoughts. But I reached the conclusion that it is best that this remain, i.e., that the resolution remain as part of Labour's official platform. Were we asked what should be our program, I would find it inconceivable to tell them transfer, because our talk on the subject might cause harm in two ways. A, it could cause us harm in public opinion in the world, because it might give the impression that there is no room for more Jews in Palestine without ejecting the Arabs. B, such declarations in support of transfer would force the Arabs onto their hind legs, i.e., would shock and stir them up. Nonetheless, declared Ben-Gurion, transfer of Arabs is easier than any other type of transfer. There are Arab states in the area, and it is clear that if the Arabs of Palestine are sent to the Arab countries, this will better their situation and not the contrary. The rest of the JAE members followed suit. Yitzhak Grunbaum, who would be Israel's first interior minister in 1948, declared, "To my mind, there is an Arab consideration in favor of transfer. That is, in the increase of population of Iraq by additional Arabs. It is the function of the Jews occasionally to make the Gentiles, Goyim, aware of things they did not until then perceive, If, for example, it is possible to create artificially in Iraq conditions that will magnetize the Arabs of Palestine to emigrate to Iraq, I do not see in it any iniquity or crime. Eliyahu Dobkin, a Mapai stalwart and director of the Jewish Agency's Immigration Department, said, "There will be in the country a large Arab minority and it must be ejected. There is no room for our internal inhibitions in this matter." Eliezer Kaplan, the number 3 man in Mapai who would become Israel's first finance minister, said, "Regarding the matter of transfer, I have only one request. Let us not start arguing among ourselves. This will cause us the most damage externally." Dov Joseph, the agency's legal advisor, and soon to be Israel's justice minister, chimed in. "I agree with Mr. Kaplan." Werner David Senator said, "I do not regard the question of transfer as a moral or immoral problem. It is not a matter I would refuse to consider." Ben-Gurion returned to the transfer theme the following month, when he proposed bringing 1 million Jewish immigrants to Palestine's shores immediately. The religious Mizrahi Party's Moshe Chaim Shapira said that the matter would force the Yishuv to consider transferring Arabs. Ben-Gurion replied, "I am opposed that any proposal for transfer should come from our side. I do not reject transfer on moral grounds, and I do not reject it on political grounds. If there is a chance for it, I support it. With regard to the Druze, it is possible. It is possible to move all the Druze voluntarily to Jabal Druze in Syria. The other Arabs I don't know, but it must not be a Jewish proposal." The Israelis are lying when they falsely claim that the Palestinians have left them with no choice but to mass murder and expel the Palestinians to other nations around the world. It has been their plan all along, and they themselves manufactured this most recent obscene and absurd excuse for committing genocide against the Palestinians and slaughtering their children and babies. The Bible bears witness to this ancient and most vile scheme. The Bible also plans for what comes next, their messianic conquest of the entire earth and genocide of all remaining non-Jews.